Guess what? You can totally build this awesome slider in Flutter without using a single package. But hold on, that's just the start. After we nail the slider, I'm gonna show you how you can make this cool scrolling effect. Then we are gonna create this awesome 3D cursor. Look at this. It looks so good. And we'll wrap our animation adventures with this cool custom page transition. In this episode, I'm gonna teach you how you can create this slider. If you want to code along with me, grab the starting project from GitHub. After you run it, it should look like this. All the images and icons are stored in the assets directory. Now let's move to the lib directory, where we have two main folders, core and features. Inside the features, you'll find home and magazine detail pages. What you are seeing here is the preview of the home page, which is made up of simple UI widgets. This is where we are going to implement our slider. Let's get rid of the to-do command. Replace the spacer widget with an expanded widget. And for its child, use magazine cover image. This widget needs a magazine, for which pass the first item from fake magazines. The magazine cover image is a straightforward widget that returns an image with an aspect ratio of 0.75. Let me show you the fake magazines list. We have 13 items here, and the great news is all of those included in the starting code so that we can focus on our animation. For our final result, we want one magazine cover on the left, another on the right, and the main one on the top. To achieve this, wrap our magazine cover image in a transform widget. To move the cover on the left, we set its offset to -70 and 30. However, it's smaller than the main one, so we adjust its scale to 0.6. The last adjustment we need is rotation, by setting the rotation angle to pi.0.1. Oops, it rotated the wrong way. Simply add a minus sign before the angle will correct the direction. Pi.0.1 means it rotates by 18 degrees. Now let's add other images to match what we have in our final preview. Wrap the transform.translate with a column. Then swap that column for a stack. Next, in the stacks children, we're going to use list.generate to crack out our items. Set the length to 4. I will explain why in a moment. Change the index to stack index for better clarity. Next, to make our code more organized and reusable, we're going to extract this whole setup and name it infinite draggable slider. Copy all that code and under the widget folder, create a new file, infinite draggable slider. Paste it all in there and fix any missing imports. Back to the home page, import this infinite draggable slider to clear out any errors. Convert this to a stateful widget because here we need to mention our animation controller and others. We're going to need 3 parameters. Item builder, allow us to pass in all the items we want to slide. Item counter, tell us how many there are, and index, determine the current item to display. While item builder and item counter are essential, index is optional and default to 0. Back to the home page, set item count to the length of our fake magazines. For item builder, pass the magazine cover image. Now back to the slider, and on child, pass the item builder with context and stack index that identify which one we need to render. Refactoring done, but now all the covers are stacked one to another. Let's fix that. To sort out the stacking issue, create a function that calculates the offset for each item based on its stack index. I'll name this function getOffset, and it will take a stack index as its parameter. The logic goes like that. If the stack index is 0, then we'll use an offset of -70 and 30. Oh, make sure it's stack index. Got a little typo. If it returns null, then the default offset is 0 and 0. For a stack index of 1, the offset is 70 and 30. Then in the slider, we replace the hard-coded offset with this getOffset function. It might look a bit odd initially. Don't worry, we'll fix it later. If we had only one item, it shows perfectly. Then if 2, the offset is perfect. The rest is not. That's why it looks a bit weird. The third one shows on the center, but we set the length to 4. That's why the last one shows on top of that one. The question is why? Because I made a mistake. Initially, the first offset should be 0 and 30. For the next one, it should be minus 70 and 30. And for the third one, it's going to be 70 and 30. Let's go over this again. We'll set the length to 1. The first one shows perfectly. When we have 2 items, one shows up on the left. And when there are 3, the third one appears on the right. The fourth one will be right in the center because we set the default offset to 0. You might wonder why for when a user could add 10, 20, even 100 magazine cards. Well, the answer is all about making our app work smoother and faster. By setting the length to 4, we are using a trick called lazy loading. That means we only load the next 4 magazine cards as needed. It gives a great performance boost, especially when we have a lot of cards. Right now, all the magazines are rotated at the same angle, but that's not what we want. We want each magazine to rotate at a different angle. So we're going to create a new function named getAngle, and this function required a stack index to work. Now, if the index is 0, then the angle will be 0. At index 1, we want it to rotate by minus 18 degrees. Since we use 18 degrees a lot, we have made it a variable and mention it here. Let's pass the stack index, and if it returns null, we'll just make the angle 0. Still, it looks broken, but if there's only one magazine, then it looks exactly what we want. For the next one, it should rotate in the opposite direction. To make it, we just add a minus sign to the angle. Now we haven't set a specific angle for the third magazine yet. For the third one, we'll use our default 18-degree angle, and that's exactly what we want. And the last one is at the perfect angle. The default angle is 0 and we want 0 here. Right now, all the magazine cover look very small. That's because we have set their scale value to 0.6, which is almost half their actual size. Let's fix this by creating a new function. This time, we'll call it getScale. Here's how it should work. If the index is 0, then the scale should be 0.6. For index 1, make it 0.9. And for index 2, let's go with 0.95. If it's anything else, we'll use the default scale, which is 1. After we add this function to our scale, things are looking closer to what we want. Now the covers feels a bit too big. To adjust this, let's go back to our home widget and tweak the height a bit more, both here and there. Now with those adjustments, everything looks just right. Next, we need to add a drag feature. When you drag it to the left or right, it will shift to the next magazine. And if you drag it the other way, it shifts back to its original position. We want to make our slide changes by dragging them left or right. To do this, first we need to create a new file under our widget folder called draggable-widget.dirt. Inside this file, let's create a stateful widget. We'll call it draggable-widget. We also need an enum to understand if the slide is moving left or right. For our draggable widget, we are going to need few things. A child widget to display, a way to figure out which direction the slide is going with onSlideOut, a function for when it's pressed, and finally a flag called isEnableDrag to control if dragging is allowed. You'll see soon why we need each of those. Next, replace the placeholder widget with the gesture detector. This lets us detect dragging motion on the child we pass to it. Then in our infinite draggable slider, we are going to replace the child with our new draggable widget. On its child, pass it. Also just want to drag the top one. That's why if the stack index is 3, it's draggable. Let's back to our draggable widget and add few more things. First, we need an animation controller. Let's call it restore controller. This will be important for moving our widget back to its starting position later on. Also, we are going to need a widget key and start offset. The default is 0. The pan offset is another keyword. It's what allows us to actually move the card. We'll also set the size and angle to 0 for now. Since we are using an animation controller, it's important to add single ticker provider state mixing to our class. In the initState method, we'll set up our restore animation, and not to forget to dispose it properly when the widget is no longer needed. On pan start, store the position to the start offset. Now, if you try it out, you'll notice it doesn't move yet. Here's the trick. To make that happen, we wrap our child with a transform widget, set its offset to pan offset. Now on pan update, we update pan offset by subtracting the current position from the start offset. And just like that, you can move the cover wherever you want. This is exactly what we are looking for.